The station hung in space like a jewel, massive and ancient. It orbited Archon Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council's power. Inside its crystal halls, representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered. Some walked on legs, others floated in specialized chambers. Some breathed oxygen, others methane or nothing at all. But they all shared one thing. They belonged here. They were full members of the council. Elena Vasquez did not feel like she belonged. She stood in the preparation chamber, checking her presentation one last time. Her hands were steady, but her stomach twisted with nerves. 20 years. That was how long humanity had been provisional members of the council. 20 years of proving themselves, of working harder than anyone else, of hoping that today would be the day they finally earned respect. The doors opened with a soft hiss. An aide gestured for her to enter. The council chamber was enormous. Tiers of seats rose in a circle around the central platform where she would speak. Thousands of beings filled those seats, their attention turning toward her as she walked to the center. The lights dimmed everywhere except on her platform. She was alone in a spotlight surrounded by the judgment of the galaxy. Elena took a breath and began. She spoke about Earth's contributions to the council, the medical advances humanity had shared, treatments for 17 different alien diseases that human doctors had helped cure, the improvements to faster-than-light communication that human engineers had designed, making messages travel twice as fast as before. The artwork, music, and literature that humans had added to the galaxy's cultural database. She showed numbers. Humans had served in 43 peacekeeping missions. They had built infrastructure on 16 council worlds. They had operated maintenance systems on stations across 3 sectors, all while being provisional members, the lowest rank in the council hierarchy. We believe, Elena said, her voice clear and strong, that humanity has demonstrated the capability, the dedication, and the character to advance to Tier 2 status. We ask the council to grant us full partnership. She finished and waited. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then the laughter began. It started with the Kresh delegation, their insect-like bodies chittering in their seats. The sound was high-pitched and sharp like breaking glass. Other species joined in. The Varath, beings made of living crystal, created a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Even some of the smaller delegations, species that humanity had helped directly, remained silent but looked away. The laughter died down. Supreme Arbiter Thane rose from his seat. He was Vorath, 10 feet tall, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like a bell. "The human petition is noted," he said. Each word was precise and cold. However, the council finds significant deficiencies in the application. Elena kept her face neutral, but her hands clenched behind her back. Another delegate stood. This was Commander Zrek of the Kresh Dominion. His 4 eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. "The human military contributions are adequate for basic peacekeeping," he said. "But their fleet is small. Their tactics are conventional. They have yet to innovate anything that would be considered advanced by council standards. Their medical advances," added a Vorath scientist, "are merely applications of existing council knowledge. They have discovered nothing new, only recombined what we already knew in slightly different ways." One by one, delegates rose to speak. Each one found something lacking in humanity. Their technology was derivative. Their culture was interesting but not exceptional. Their philosophy was shallow. Their physical capabilities were average at best. Their lifespan was too short for them to accumulate real wisdom. Elena listened to it all. Every criticism felt like a blade, but she refused to show pain. She had expected some resistance, but not this. Not wholesale mockery. Finally, the Lumini elder spoke. She was the oldest being in the chamber, perhaps the oldest being in the galaxy. She existed as a cloud of luminous gas contained in a transparent sphere. Her voice came from speakers, but it felt ancient, as if the words themselves were worn smooth by time. "Humanity is young," the elder said. Her tone was not cruel, but it was absolute. "They have potential, perhaps, but they have not yet shown the innovation, the strength, or the wisdom required for true partnership. They are adequate servants to the council. They perform their duties satisfactorily, but they are not ready to stand as equals." The words hit Elena harder than all the mockery combined. Servants. That was how the Lumini saw them, how the entire council saw them. "The petition is denied," Arbiter Thane declared. "Humanity will remain at provisional status. This decision is final and will be reviewed again in no less than 50 standard years. 50 years. More than half a human lifetime. The chamber erupted again, not with laughter this time, but with conversation. Delegates turned to each other, already moving on to other business. Humanity's petition had been interesting entertainment for a few minutes, nothing more. Elena was given one final chance to respond. The council expected her to plead, perhaps, or to argue, or to show anger that they could dismiss as primitive emotion. She did none of those things. Noted, she said, just that one word. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber. Her back was straight, her pace steady. She did not look back at the thousands of beings who had just rejected everything her species had worked for. The council found her composure strange. Some whispered about it as she left. Humans were supposed to be emotional creatures, prone to outbursts. This cold dignity was unexpected. A few of the older delegates felt a flicker of unease, though they could not say why. Elena made her way through the station's corridors. Other humans were waiting for her, members of Earth's delegation. They looked at her face and knew the answer before she spoke. "We're done here," she said quietly. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Elena spent most of it writing her report. She kept it simple and factual. She included every criticism the council had made, every species that had laughed, every way they had been dismissed. When she finally stood before the Unity Parliament on Earth, the men and women who governed humanity listened in silence. She expected anger. She expected demands for action, for protest, for some kind of response. Instead, the Prime Minister simply asked, "What do you recommend, Ambassador?" Elena thought about the laughter in the council chamber. She thought about being called adequate servants. She thought about 50 years before humanity would even be considered again. "They've made their position clear," she said. "I recommend we make ours equally clear." "Which is?" Elena met the Prime Minister's eyes. "That we don't need their validation to matter." The Parliament voted that night. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would fulfill its existing obligations to the Council. It would honor all contracts and treaties. But beyond that, Earth would begin what they called the Independence Initiative. They would step back from the Council. Not with anger or threats, just a quiet withdrawal. They would stop trying to prove themselves by alien standards and start building something by their own. No one in the Parliament realized it yet. But they had just made a decision that would shake the foundation of galactic civilization. They had chosen to walk away. And sometimes walking away in silence is the most powerful thing you can do. The changes started small. So small that most of the galaxy did not notice them at all. 3 months after the failed petition, Ambassador Chen replaced Elena Vasquez as Earth's primary representative to the Council. He was older than Elena, with gray hair and a quiet way of speaking. He attended all the mandatory council sessions, sitting in humanity's designated seat in the outer ring where provisional members belonged. He voted when required. He filed the necessary reports, but he did nothing else. When optional sessions were called to discuss new trade agreements, Chen did not attend. When the council hosted cultural exchanges, Earth sent its regrets. When scientific symposiums invited human researchers to present their work, the invitations were politely declined. The council barely noticed. Humanity had never been central to their operations anyway. They were useful for certain tasks, adequate workers, but not important. If the humans wanted to sulk after their rejection, let them. But in the background, things were changing. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo ran the Human Technical Support Team on Station Gamma 7, a Vorath research facility studying exotic matter. She had worked there for 8 years, longer than any other human. The Vorath scientists respected her in their way. She kept the station running smoothly, fixed problems before they became critical, and never asked for credit. One morning, she submitted her resignation. "I'm returning to Earth," she told the station director. "Personal reasons." The director was annoyed but not concerned. "How long to train your replacement?" "I've prepared detailed documentation for all systems," Sarah said. "Everything is in order. My last day is in 2 weeks." 2 weeks later, she was gone. Her replacement was a Vorath technician who read through her documentation and felt confident. The systems were clearly labeled. How hard could it be? 3 months later, Station Gamma 7 began experiencing mysterious malfunctions. Nothing catastrophic, just inefficiencies. Systems that used to run smoothly now had glitches. Equipment that never broke down started requiring constant maintenance. The exotic matter containment fields fluctuated in ways they never had before. It took the Vorath 6 months to realize the problem. Sarah had not just maintained the systems. She had quietly improved them over 8 years, making thousands of small optimizations that were never officially documented. She had adapted the equipment to work better, created shortcuts in the maintenance protocols, and developed an intuitive understanding of how everything connected. When she left, all that knowledge went with her. The station still worked, but not as well, and there was no one left who understood why. The same thing was happening across the galaxy. Commander Liu had served with the Kresh military as a tactical liaison for 12 years. He coordinated joint operations between human peacekeeping forces and Kresh warriors. He made the Kresh look good, smoothing over their tactical mistakes, helping them appear more organized than they actually were. One day, he requested a transfer back to Earth. His request was approved without question. 6 months later, the Kresh launched a joint operation against pirates in the Outer Rim. Without Liu there to coordinate, the operation turned into a mess. 3 different Kresh commanders gave conflicting orders. 2 ships nearly fired on each other by accident. The pirates escaped. The Kresh commander in charge blamed his subordinates. He never realized that Liu had been the invisible glue holding their operations together. One by one, humans across the galaxy began coming home. They did not all leave at once. That would have been too obvious, too dramatic. Instead, they left quietly, a few at a time over many months. They finished their contracts or found legitimate reasons to resign. They were always professional. They always left documentation. They never caused problems, but each departure left a small hole. And small holes, multiplied across 1,000 worlds, eventually became noticeable. Ambassador Chen attended a council session about trade route security. It was the kind of session that usually bored him, full of statistics and logistics discussions. But today something was different. The Lumini delegate was complaining about shipment delays. "The routes through Sector 7 have become unreliable," she said. "Deliveries that used to take 2 weeks now take 4. A Vorath merchant added his complaint. "Our efficiency ratings have dropped across all major shipping lanes." "We cannot identify the cause." Chen said nothing. He knew the cause. Humanity had designed the optimization algorithms that made Council shipping routes efficient. When human programmers stopped maintaining those systems, stopped making improvements, the old inefficiencies crept back in. The Council spent 2 hours debating the problem. They never once considered that the humans might have anything to do with it. That night, Chen sent a message to Earth. They still don't see it. They still think we're irrelevant. On Earth, the Independence Initiative was moving forward. The Unity Parliament had authorized massive infrastructure projects. New shipyards orbited Mars and Luna, building vessels with designs that had never been shared with the Council. Research facilities on Earth and the outer colonies worked on projects that were no longer published in galactic journals. Director Okonkwo, back on Earth now, led a team developing new propulsion systems. They were based on Council technology, but improved in ways the Council had never considered. The alien species were so confident in their superiority that they had stopped asking what-if questions. Humans still ask those questions. What if we modified the field geometry this way? What if we used different materials? What if we combined these 2 technologies that the Council keeps separate? The answers to those questions were interesting. In the asteroid belt, human engineers constructed something the Council would have called impossible. Defense platforms using hybrid technology, mixing human innovation with alien science in ways that created something new. The platforms were not weapons exactly, more like shields, but very sophisticated shields. None of this was shared with the Council. For the first time in 20 years, human research stayed on human computers. Across Earth's colonies, something else was changing too. The culture was shifting. For 2 decades, humanity had measured itself against alien standards. Every achievement was evaluated by whether the Council would approve. Every innovation was tested against the question, will this impress them? Now that question was gone. Humans started asking different things. Does this work for us? Does this solve our problems? Does this make our lives better? The answers led to different choices. Better choices in many ways. A year passed since Elena's failed petition. Ambassador Chen continued his quiet presence at council sessions. He never complained, never argued, never demanded anything. When other delegates spoke to him, he was polite and professional. But he offered nothing extra. No insights, no suggestions, no friendly conversations in the hallways. The Lumini elder noticed. She was ancient and had seen many species come before the council. Something about humanity's silence felt familiar to her, though she could not place the memory. It reminded her of something from thousands of years ago, but the details were fuzzy. She called Chen to a private meeting. Her sphere of glowing gas pulsed gently as she spoke. "Your people have become very quiet," she said. "We are fulfilling all our obligations." Chen replied, "Yes, but you do nothing beyond that. Is there a requirement to do more than what is required?" The Lumini elder pulsed brighter. "No, but it is unusual. Most provisional species seek every opportunity to impress the council. Perhaps we have decided to focus on internal development," Chen said. "Perhaps," the elder agreed, but she sounded uncertain. Chen left the meeting and sent another message to Earth. "The Lumini is starting to notice, but I don't think she understands yet." On Earth, Prime Minister Adeyemi met with the leaders of the Independence Initiative. Director Okonkwo gave her report. The new shipyards were ahead of schedule. The defense platforms were operational. The research programs were producing results that exceeded expectations. "We're ready for the next phase," she said. The Prime Minister nodded. "Then let's proceed. Inform our colonies. It's time to make our intentions clear. Not with announcements or declarations. That was not humanity's way, not anymore. Instead, they would simply continue what they had started. They would keep walking away, step by quiet step until everyone finally noticed. And then the galaxy would have to decide what to do about it." The report sat on Arbiter Thane's desk for 3 days before he read it. It was from a junior Vorath analyst named Kieran, someone so low in the hierarchy that Thane barely knew the name. Junior analysts filed reports all the time. Most of them were useless observations about minor trade fluctuations or cultural events that meant nothing, but Kieran's supervisor had flagged this one as urgent. When Thane finally read it, he understood why. The report was titled Pattern Analysis, Human Activity Across Council Space, 18-month Overview. Kieran had done something simple but thorough. She had tracked every human in council space over the last 18 months. Where they worked, where they lived, what they did. Then she compared it to the previous 20 years of human activity. The numbers told a story. 18 months ago, there were roughly 50,000 humans living and working on council worlds and stations. Today, there were fewer than 20,000. The decline was steady and consistent. Every month, more humans left than arrived. Human merchant vessels used to make regular runs to council ports. Now those visits had decreased by 60%. The ships that did come completed their business quickly and left. They did not stay to socialize or trade information like before. Human researchers had published in council scientific journals for 2 decades. Over the last year, publications from human scientists had dropped to almost nothing. Not because humans had stopped doing research, but because they stopped sharing it. Most disturbing was the last section of the report. Kieran had noticed something strange about the human ships that still moved through council space. They were different. Not dramatically different, but someone with an eye for detail could see modifications, drive signatures that did not quite match the old patterns, energy readings that were slightly off from standard human vessels. Conclusion, Kieran wrote. Humanity is systematically withdrawing from council space. They are not doing so with hostility or fanfare. They are simply leaving. Additionally, they appear to be developing technologies independently, without council oversight or collaboration. Recommend immediate investigation. Thane read the report twice. Then he called an emergency council session. 2 days later, the council chamber was full. Not as full as it had been for humanity's petition, but most of the major species had representatives present. Thane presented Kieran's findings. He displayed the graphs showing human withdrawal. He showed examples of the modified ships. We believe, Thane said, that humanity is attempting to develop independently of the council. This could represent a violation of provisional membership terms. Commander Zrek of the Kresh Dominion laughed. Let them try. What can one species accomplish alone? They will come back begging for our support within a decade. Perhaps, said a Vorath merchant. But I must note that my shipping efficiency has decreased since human logistics specialists left our employ. It may be a coincidence, but it is not a coincidence, said another delegate. Our medical shipments have slowed. Our station maintenance has become less efficient. Small things, yes, but many small things. The chamber erupted in conversation. Some delegates dismissed the concerns. Others shared their own observations of declining efficiency in various sectors. A few began to wonder if humanity had been more important than they realized. The Lumine elder listened to it all in silence. Her sphere pulsed slowly, thoughtfully. When the noise finally died down, she spoke. The silence of a departing friend, she said, is more profound than the shout of an enemy. I have seen this before, long ago. When a species stops seeking our approval, stops trying to prove themselves to us, it means something has changed, not in their capabilities, but in their self-perception. What do you recommend? Thane asked. We should send a delegation to Earth, not to threaten or demand, but to understand. What are they planning? What have they become in the 18 months since we rejected them? The council debated for hours. Eventually, they agreed. A delegation would go to Sol System. They would demand answers. After all, humanity was still bound by provisional membership. They could not simply do whatever they wanted without consequences. The delegation left 2 weeks later. Supreme Arbiter Thane led it personally, accompanied by representatives from the Kresh Lumine and several other major species. Their ship was a council flagship, a massive vessel that broadcast power and authority. The journey to Sol took 8 days. As they approached the system, the delegation expected to be greeted warmly. Humans were always eager to please, always looking for chances to improve their standing with the council. Instead, their ship was met at the system's edge by something unexpected: a station. A massive orbital platform that hung in space like a fortress. It was new, built in the last year based on its design. Weapons platforms surrounded it, though they were not activated. Just visible. A reminder. This is Sol System Border Station 1, a voice said over the communication channel. Welcome, Council Delegation. Please proceed to Docking Bay 7. You will be met by our diplomatic staff. The tone was professional but not warm. There was no excitement, no eagerness to please. Thane felt the first real stirring of unease. They docked without incident. The station was clean and efficient, built with technology that looked familiar but somehow different. Hybrid designs mixing human and alien concepts in new ways. The delegation was led to comfortable quarters and told that someone would meet with them soon. Then they waited. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The quarters were nice. The food was good. The staff was polite. But no one came to explain the delay. No one apologized. The delegation simply sat in luxurious isolation, while somewhere on this station, humans did whatever they were doing. On the 3rd day, Commander Zrek demanded to see someone in charge. A young human woman appeared within an hour. She introduced herself as Assistant Coordinator Ramirez. We apologize for the wait, she said, though her tone suggested she was not particularly sorry. Director Okonkwo has been very busy. She will meet with you tomorrow. Director Okonkwo, Thane asked. We expected to meet with Ambassador Chen. Ambassador Chen handles council relations, Ramirez said. Director Okonkwo handles everything else. She is the head of the Terran Independent Systems Authority. That title sent a shock through the delegation. Terran Independent Systems Authority. Not Earth's Council Liaison Office or Human Provisional Government. Independent Systems. The next day, they finally met Director Sarah Okonkwo. She received them in a conference room with wide windows looking out at Earth. The planet hung in space beyond, blue and white and beautiful. Sarah was in her 50s, with dark skin and gray-streaked hair. She wore simple clothes, not the formal diplomatic attire the delegation expected. She greeted them politely and invited them to sit. Thank you for your patience, she said. We've been managing several important projects. What projects? Thane demanded. What is humanity doing? Why have you withdrawn from council space? Sarah folded her hands on the table. We have not withdrawn from council space. We continue to fulfill all obligations under our provisional membership. All treaties remain in force. All contracts are being honored. We simply decided to focus our resources on internal development rather than pursuing full council membership. You cannot develop independently, a Kresh representative said. Provisional members are required to share research and coordinate their activities with the council. Sarah smiled slightly. I have reviewed the provisional membership accords very carefully. There is no such requirement. We must share information about military capabilities that might threaten Council security. We have done so. We must participate in mandatory Council sessions. Ambassador Chen does so. We must fulfill contracted obligations. We are doing so. Beyond that, the accords actually give provisional members significant autonomy. She pulled up a document on the screen behind her. It was the provisional membership accords, with several sections highlighted. Clause 47 specifically allows a provisional species to withdraw from candidacy for full membership while maintaining basic diplomatic relations. We invoked that clause 6 months ago. The paperwork was filed properly. Perhaps it was lost in the Council's bureaucracy. Thane stared at the document. She was right. Clause 47 existed. He had never bothered to read it before because no species had ever invoked it. Why would they? Every species wanted full Council membership, except humanity, apparently. But you need us, Thane said. His voice was less certain now. Your technology, your protection. We appreciate what we learned from the Council, Sarah interrupted gently. The last 20 years were educational, but we have concluded that the Council's vision and humanity's aspirations are not aligned. We have different ideas about what partnership means, different values, different goals. What goals? The Lumine Elder asked. Sarah looked at the ancient being. The freedom to rise or fall by our own choices. The opportunity to build something that reflects who we are, not who others think we should be. The chance to help other species who find themselves in the same position we were in. Other species? Zrek leaned forward. What other species? There are many worlds in the galaxy that have not joined the Council, Sarah said. Some were rejected like us. Others never applied, suspecting they would not be welcomed. We have been in contact with several of them. They find our approach interesting. The Council delegation returned to Archon Prime in silence. Throughout the 8-day journey, the representatives barely spoke to each other. Each was lost in their own thoughts, trying to process what they had seen. Supreme Arbiter Thane spent hours in his quarters, reviewing everything humanity had done over the past 20 years. He looked at the data with new eyes now. All those humans who had worked so quietly in Council space, never demanding recognition, never causing problems. He had thought they were simply grateful for the opportunity to serve. Now he realized they had been learning, studying, preparing. When the delegation finally convened to write their report, the disagreements began immediately. This is a direct challenge to Council authority, Commander Zrek insisted. We must respond with strength. Economic sanctions, trade restrictions, a demonstration that they cannot simply leave without consequences. To what end? Asked the Lumini Elder. They have violated no treaties, broken no laws. They have simply chosen a different path. They are building military capabilities without oversight, a Vorath security officer said. Those defense platforms around their system are more sophisticated than anything we have seen from a provisional species. They could be a threat, or they could simply be defending their own space, countered a merchant delegate. We have no evidence of hostile intent. The arguments went on for hours. Eventually, they produced a report that satisfied no one. It documented what humanity had done but offered no clear recommendations. The Council would have to decide for itself how to respond. The full Council session took place a week later. The chamber was packed. Word had spread about humanity's withdrawal, and every species wanted to hear what had happened. Thane presented the delegation's findings. He showed images of Sol System's new defenses. He explained how humanity had invoked Clause 47 and technically remained within the bounds of their provisional membership while effectively operating independently. The reaction was mixed. Some delegates were angry, feeling that humanity had shown disrespect. Others were dismissive, certain that this independence attempt would fail within a few years. A few were thoughtful, wondering what it meant that a species would rather walk away than continue seeking Council approval. We should offer them Tier 2 status after all, suggested a Vorath diplomat. Show them that the Council is willing to reconsider. Bring them back into the fold. Why should we reward their arrogance? Zrek demanded. They left. Let them stay gone. Because we may have made a mistake, said the Lumine Elder quietly. The chamber fell silent. The Elder rarely spoke these days, and when she did, even the most aggressive delegates listened. I have lived for a very long time, she continued. I have seen thousands of species come before this council. Most were eager to join us to prove themselves worthy of our approval. But there were a few in the distant past who chose differently. They decided that our standards were not their standards, that our path was not their path. And we let them go, thinking they would fail. Did they fail? Thane asked. Some did, but others thrived. They built civilizations that rivaled our own, just in different ways. We lost the opportunity to work with them, to learn from them, because we were too certain of our own superiority to recognize value that did not look like what we expected. The Elder's sphere pulsed with a color that suggested sadness. I fear we are making the same mistake again. We judged humanity by our standards and found them wanting, but we never asked what they might become if judged by their own standards. The debate continued, but no decision was reached. The council agreed to take no immediate action. They would watch and wait. Surely humanity would encounter problems they could not solve alone. Surely they would realize they needed the council after all. But as weeks turned into months, that certainty began to erode. The first major incident happened in the Kresh Dominion's border territories. A species called the Ravoth had been causing problems for years, raiding outlying colonies and disrupting trade. The Kresh military normally handled such threats with ease, but this time the situation escalated quickly. The Ravoth attacked a Kresh military outpost in force. The Kresh commander called for reinforcements and followed standard protocols for a joint response. Those protocols assumed that human tactical coordinators would be available to help integrate the various Kresh units and manage communications. But there were no human coordinators anymore. They had all gone home. The battle became chaos. 3 different Kresh commanders gave conflicting orders. Communication systems became overloaded. 2 Kresh ships nearly fired on each other in the confusion. By the time they sorted themselves out, the Ravoth had destroyed the outpost and escaped. Commander Zrek was furious. He sent an official request to Earth for military assistance. The response came from Ambassador Chen, polite as always. Earth appreciates the Kresh Dominion's request, but must respectfully decline. Our military resources are committed to protecting our own territories. We recommend the Dominion contact the Council Military Coordination Office for assistance. The Council Military Office tried to help, but they quickly discovered a problem. They had always relied on human coordinators to make their joint operations work smoothly. Without those humans, the systems that had run efficiently for 20 years suddenly did not work as well. The Kresh eventually contained the Ravoth threat, but it took 3 times longer than it should have, and cost far more lives than necessary. On Vorath commercial stations across Council space, efficiency ratings continued to drop. Station directors hired new technicians to replace the departed humans, but the new workers could not figure out why systems kept malfunctioning. The documentation the humans had left was technically accurate, but it did not capture the intuitive knowledge that came from years of experience. One station director finally swallowed his pride and sent a message to Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, asking if she would return as a consultant. Even part-time assistance would help. Her response was courteous but firm. I appreciate the offer, but I am committed to projects here on Earth. However, I would be happy to recommend some excellent Vorath technicians who might be able to help you. I understand the challenges you are facing. The subtext was clear. You wanted us gone. Now figure it out yourselves. The real shock came from the frontier regions, the areas of space where Council influence was weak. These were places where young civilizations existed, species that were not ready or not willing to join the Council. For years, these worlds had been ignored by the major powers, considered unimportant. Humanity did not ignore them. A species called the Terran received a delegation from Earth. The Terran were at an early stage of space development, barely capable of interstellar travel. They had sent exploratory messages to the Council years ago, but never received a response. The Council did not consider them advanced enough to bother with. The human delegation offered something simple, a trade agreement and a mutual defense pact. Not charity, but partnership. The Terran would share their unique biological research, which was surprisingly advanced. Earth would share propulsion technology and help the Terran build better ships. The agreement was signed within a month. Then another species signed a similar agreement with Earth. Then another. Within 6 months, humanity had established formal relations with 12 independent species that the Council had dismissed as irrelevant. These species were not powerful individually, but together, they represented a significant portion of the frontier territories, and they were all orbiting around Earth now. Not the Council. When news of these agreements reached Archon Prime, the reaction was swift and angry. "This is unacceptable," Thane declared in an emergency council session. "Humanity is creating a rival alliance. They are deliberately undermining Council authority." "Are they?" asked a thoughtful Vorath philosopher. "Or are they simply offering partnership to species that we rejected? Species that we deemed unworthy of our attention?" "It does not matter," Zrek said. "We must respond. Economic sanctions at minimum. Make it clear that there are consequences for this behavior. Sanctions will only push them further away," the Lumini elder warned, "and it will show every other species in the galaxy that we punish those who choose independence." "Is that the message we want to send?" The debate raged for days. Finally, a compromise was reached. The Council would send another delegation to Earth, this time with an offer. Humanity would be granted Tier 2 status immediately, with full voting rights and access to all Council resources. In exchange, they would cease their independent agreements with frontier species and reintegrate with Council operations. It was a generous offer. More than generous. It was everything humanity had asked for 18 months ago. Ambassador Chen received the delegation on Border Station 1. He listened to their offer politely. He asked several clarifying questions about the terms. Then he smiled sadly and shook his head. "I appreciate the Council's reconsideration," he said, "but we are no longer interested in Tier 2 status." "You would refuse full membership?" the delegation leader asked, shocked. "We would refuse membership that comes with conditions about who we can partner with," Chen said. "We are building something different now. Something based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. The Council has its way of doing things. We respect that. But it is not our way." 6 months after the Council's rejected offer, the true scope of the change became impossible to ignore. On Archon Prime, analysts tracked 17 independent species that had signed partnerships with Earth. These were not puppet states or colonies. The agreements were structured as genuine partnerships, with both sides contributing and both sides benefiting. Humanity shared technology but also learned from their partners. The Terran biological research had already led to breakthroughs in human medicine. A species called the Vex contributed mathematical models that improved human starship designs. The network was growing, and it was growing fast. Commander Zrek sat in his office on the Kresh homeworld, reviewing casualty reports from the Ravoth conflict. The numbers were brutal. Without human tactical coordinators, Kresh military operations had taken twice as long and cost 3 times as many lives. His commanders were furious, demanding answers. "Why did we let the humans leave?" one general asked. "They made us look competent. Without them, we are exposed." Zrek had no good answer. Pride had blinded them. They had mocked human military contributions as adequate but unremarkable. Now they realized that adequate was a lot better than what they had without human help. He drafted a message to Earth, not a request for military assistance, but a trade proposal. The Kresh Dominion would offer favorable trade terms if human tactical advisors would consider returning to Kresh space. Not as subordinates, but as paid consultants. The response came from Director Okonkwo. "The Terran Independent Systems Authority appreciates the Dominion's offer. However, our military personnel are currently committed to defense and training operations within our alliance. We will keep your proposal on file should circumstances change." Translation: "We are too busy helping our actual partners to help you." Zrek crumpled the message. For the first time in his long military career, he felt what it was like to be dismissed as irrelevant. On Council commercial stations, the problems continued to compound. A Vorath merchant consortium hired an entire team of Vorath engineers to optimize their logistics systems. The engineers spent 6 months analyzing the code that humans had written years ago. They found it remarkably elegant but also incredibly complex. Every system connected to every other system in ways that were not obvious. When they finally understood how it all worked, they realized something disturbing. The human programmers had been compensating for fundamental inefficiencies in Vorath station design. The humans had never mentioned these inefficiencies, had never criticized Vorath engineering. They had just quietly worked around the problems, making everything run smoothly. Now those inefficiencies were exposed. Fixing them would require redesigning major portions of every Vorath commercial station in Council space. The cost would be enormous. The consortium sent a formal letter to the Vorath Council of Engineers documenting what they had discovered. The letter was carefully worded, but its message was clear. For 20 years, humans had been making Vorath civilization run better than it actually should have, and no one had noticed or thanked them. Medical shipments across Council space continued to experience delays. The distribution network that had run so smoothly for decades was falling apart. Illumine Health Administrator spent weeks trying to understand why. She finally discovered the truth in an old file. 15 years ago, a human logistics specialist named David Torres had proposed a new distribution protocol. He called it the Redundant Distribution Protocol. The name was boring and technical. The proposal suggested adding what seemed like unnecessary complexity to the shipping routes. Torres had presented it to the Council Logistics Committee. They had dismissed it as over-engineering. The current system worked fine. Why add complexity? Torres had gone away and never brought it up again. But quietly, working through the human logistics network, he had implemented the protocol anyway. Not officially. Just humans talking to humans, adjusting their routes slightly, adding small redundancies that no one else noticed. For 15 years, that invisible network had compensated for weaknesses in the Council's distribution system. When the humans left, the redundancies disappeared. The weaknesses were exposed. The health administrator sat in her office, staring at Torres's old proposal. He had been right. The Council had been wrong, and they had been too arrogant to listen. On Earth, life continued to transform. The orbital shipyards were producing vessels at a rate that surprised even the human engineers. The new propulsion systems, mixing alien concepts with human innovation, were proving more efficient than either civilization had achieved alone. Director Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of Border Station 1, watching ships come and go. Human vessels, yes, but also Terran ships, Vex ships, vessels from a dozen species that had joined the Independent Systems Alliance. That was what they were calling it now. The ISA. "It is remarkable," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Ambassador Chen. He had been spending more time on Earth lately with less and less to do at council sessions. "What is remarkable?" Sarah asked. "That we built this in less than 2 years. From being mocked and rejected to creating an alliance of equals." Sarah smiled. "We did not build it from nothing. We built it from 20 years of hard work that no one appreciated. Every human who served in council space, every technician and programmer and coordinator who quietly made things better, they were all preparing for this moment. They just did not know it yet. Do you think the council will ever understand what they lost?" "Some of them already do," Sarah said. "The Lumini Elder understands. A few others are starting to realize, but it does not matter whether they understand or not. We are not doing this for them. We are doing it for us." In the council chambers on Archon Prime, the Lumini Elder called a special session. Her ancient sphere pulsed with unusual intensity as she addressed the assembled delegates. "We must speak honestly about what has happened," she began. "Humanity has not attacked us. They have not threatened us. They have not violated any laws or broken any treaties. They have simply stopped trying to prove themselves to us and started building something new. They are creating a rival power block," Srek interrupted. "This threatens council stability." "No," the Elder said firmly. "Our pride threatens council stability. Our inability to recognize value that does not conform to our expectations threatens stability. Humanity was never our enemy. We made them feel like they were our servants, and we are surprised that they left." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I have reviewed our history carefully. Do you know how many species we have rejected over the centuries? Hundreds. We told them they were not good enough, not advanced enough, not worthy. Most of them struggled and failed. A few survived but remained isolated. But what if they had not been alone? What if they had found each other, formed alliances, built something together?" The chamber was silent. "That is what humanity is doing," the Elder continued. "They are gathering all the species we discarded and showing them that our approval was never necessary for success. And more species will join them. Every world we have ignored, every civilization we have deemed unworthy, they will all look at Earth and wonder why they should seek our approval. What do you suggest?" Thane asked quietly. "Humility," the Elder said. "Acknowledge that we made a mistake, not by offering them membership, but by mocking them in the first place. Reach out with genuine respect, not as superiors granting favors but as equals seeking partnership. They will refuse, someone said. Perhaps, but at least we will have tried to repair the damage our arrogance caused. The council debated for hours. In the end, they authorized the Lumini Elder herself to visit Earth, not as a delegation leader with demands, but as an individual seeking conversation. She arrived at Border Station 1 3 weeks later. Director Okonkwo met her personally, which was a courtesy the Elder appreciated. They sat in the observation room looking out at Earth. "Thank you for seeing me," the Elder said. "You are always welcome here," Sarah replied. "You at least tried to warn your council. I remember your words at our petition hearing. You were not cruel, just honest." "Honest but wrong," the Elder said. "I said your people lacked the innovation, strength, and wisdom for partnership. I was measuring you by our standards. I should have asked what standards you would set for yourselves." Sarah said nothing, waiting. "I am very old," the Elder continued. "I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have seen species achieve great things and species destroy themselves. But I have never seen what you are building. An alliance based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy, where small species are valued as much as powerful ones, where innovation comes from collaboration rather than competition. Is that so different from what the Council claims to be?" Sarah asked. "Yes," the Elder said simply. "The Council claims to value all species, but in truth we have always had favorites. Always had a hierarchy. You cannot tell me that a Voreth delegate has the same influence as a representative from a small frontier species, but in your alliance I have seen the Terran and the Vex treated with the same respect as humans. That is genuinely different." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "What does the Council want, Elder?" "I cannot speak for the Council, but I can tell you what I hope for. I hope that someday, the Council and the Independent Systems Alliance can work together.